shadow of the big house, it's IT4U. Tips and tricks on ITS tools, products, services, and more with your host, Jean Mackey.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to IT4U. These are interactive webinars brought to you by ITS. And if you're having any audio or video problems during this live webinar, tell us in the chat pod, and if it's not on our end, we might have some tips to help make things better. If you are watching the YouTube closed caption version of this, look in the description field, and we've got a Google Doc that's got all the links that are live in this Adobe version. If you do need an accommodation to participate in our live episodes, please let us know and give us a little bit of notice. And what's coming up? Hey, Business Objects is being upgraded, and I'm going to offer a sneak peek on September 15th. So you might want to check that out, and you can register in my link. Today, we have accessibility tips for Mac users, and Jane Vincent, who's our Assistive Technology Manager for ITS and for the campus, is here. So let me share the screen and turn it over to Jane.
Good morning, and thanks very much, Jean. A couple of notes before I actually start demonstrating some features. One thing that I do want to emphasize is that these features are not only for people with disabilities. Many are likely to have much wider applications, particularly some of the display features that may help configure the screen so it's easier to use in a variety of situations. We're not going to go through the full range of features that are available in the Mac operating system today. What I'm going to try to do is to highlight some of the features that are new to Yosemite, which is the version of the Mac operating system that's going to be pushed out to the Sites machine starting this fall, and also go through some classic features that have been around for a while that are most likely to be of use to a wide range of people. A lot of the features we're going to be looking at in the Mac system are also available on the Windows machine, and I did a presentation about this for Windows 7 a while back. In the document, the presenter's notes document linked to this presentation. There's a link on my link to our Windows 7 presentation, and hopefully we'll be upgrading that once our systems upgrade to Windows 10. And if you have any questions about this or any other assistive technologies, the staff at the Knox Center is always willing to answer questions and provide demonstrations, and you can reach us at sites.knox@umich.edu. So, and I will be pausing for questions during the presentation, or if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat box. So, I'm going to start by looking at some of the dictation features. And you actually set up dictation in two different control panels on the Mac. To start setting it up, you go into the dictation and speech control panel. You can turn dictation on or off, and you have the option of turning on or off use enhanced dictation. And I'm going to suggest that you always, if you're going to use dictation that's built into the Mac, I'm going to suggest that you always click on used enhanced dictation. That's going to give you access to a wider range of features, and it's also going to make things much faster. If you have it turned off, your speech is going to have to go to Apple servers to be translated into text. If you click on Use Enhanced Dictation, you're going to be able to use dictation locally. One nice thing in Yosemite is that there are a number of languages that have been added. You'll note that there are a number of varieties of English, but there's also Spanish, Chinese, Croatian, Indonesian, Malaysian, very wide range of languages available. The other control panel that's relevant to dictation is if you go into System Preferences, Accessibility, Scroll all the way down to the bottom and then click on Dictation. You will notice, if you've used this in versions prior to Yosemite, that if you click on Dictation Commands, there's now a much wider range of commands available, so that dictation can not only be used for text, but it can also be used to emulate some mouse functions. This is not going to be as wide-ranging as third-party programs such as Drag and Dictate for the Mac and Drag and Naturally Speaking for Windows, but it is certainly an improvement over prior versions of what was built into the Mac operating system. So we're now going to look at some ways to adjust the display. And what I'm going to start with is a program called VoiceOver, which is for people who can't or prefer not to look at the actual display. VoiceOver provides an audio equivalent. It also provides access to keyboard commands so that you don't have to use the mouse for people who don't have sufficient vision to have hand-eye coordination. VoiceOver is a way to use the computer without having to see where the mouse cursor is. So you click on VoiceOver to turn it on. Click on Enable VoiceOver, and that's going to bring up the audio.
VoiceOver speaks descriptions of items on the screen and can be used to control the computer using only your keyboard.
Okay, and it is a full-featured screen reader, so that someone who's blind would be able to turn it on and start using a Mac right away. There are no third-party programs that need to be added. The VoiceOver utility provides a number of different settings, including the ability to use VoiceOver with a Braille output device, lets you set which voice you want, lets you adjust the sound, gives you a wide range of options. In addition, I've not been able to find a VoiceOver manual for Yosemite online, but if you click Open VoiceOver Training, there is a very good tutorial that takes you through the most salient features of VoiceOver. For people who have some ability to see, but who want to be able to use something on a Mac that's reasonably equivalent to the pinch feature on a mobile device, there is the zoom function. And if I hit Command Option equals, for example, that will let me zoom in. Mike Stork, who is running the technicals on this presentation, thank you, Mike, tells me that not everything is going to be visible on the webinar. So I'm going to try to describe as much as I can, but simply by hitting Command Option equals and Command Option minus, I'm able to zoom in and out very easily if the zoom feature is turned on. Some additional refinements can be found in the display control panels. Some of the things that I can do include invert colors, which turns all the whites to black, and inverts all other colors as well. Turns the blues to orange, for example, and vice versa. Use grayscale, which takes out all color. For some people, that can be a lot easier to see, including people who are sensitive to glare. Differentiate without color is a very important setting, for example, for people with color blindness. So if I say open Chrome, what I can do is I can point at the buttons, the close and minimize and maximize buttons, and you will notice that instead of just being color-coded, there are now also symbols, an X sign, for example, in the close box, so that even if you're colorblind or you have other difficulties distinguishing color, it's very easy to tell the function of each button. You can increase the contrast. This is a subtle setting, but for example, and I don't know if you can see this in the webinar, Mike tells me we can, but there is now a line around the dialog box. If I turn that off, the line goes away. So the line for some people is going to help indicate where the dialog box is, make it easier to see. The reduced transparency setting shows up best over on the left side icons. For some people with Yosemite, Yosemite now puts a transparent background behind the toolbar on the left. That makes the toolbar difficult to see for some people. You can turn that transparency off to give yourself an opaque background to those icons if you prefer. You can also change the display contrast so that you have quite a bit of brightness on the screen. You can also change the cursor size. The default cursor size is very small, but you can bump it up so that it is quite large. And Patricia Anderson, thank you, is indicating that there is a voiceover manual for purchase. But what Apple provides for free is also quite good. So I'm going to pause for a sec and see if there are any questions. And if not, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the features that are useful for people who have difficulty with hearing. If I go down to Media and select Captions, I can specify how subtitles were provided in HTML5, video, and other selected video, unfortunately not in YouTube. But I can choose the look and feel for subtitles. I can go with the default, which is a nice white on gray, the classic, which is a very typewriter-looking font, or large text, or there's a very nice plus sign where I can change a number of variables such as the background color, the opacity, the text color and size, and the font. And I can specify whether or not I want the video settings to override the preferences that I have set. For people who do have some hearing but want some adjustments to the sound, there's the ability to flash the screen when an alert sound occurs. Again, unfortunately, the webinar software will not pick that up. But it's very useful if you're not able to hear the system sound. There's also a feature unique to the Mac, this does not show up on Windows, that lets you play stereo audio as mono. So for example, if you have a hearing aid in one ear and you have a headphone in the other, if you click on play stereo audio as mono, that will put both tracks into the ear that has the headphone so that you are able to hear all parts of the audio recording. Some interaction features for people who have difficulty using a standard keyboard and mouse. Again, in the accessibility control panel, there are some keyboard features. Sticky keys is a particularly nice one. That's been around for a very long time. What sticky keys lets you do, if you only have use of one hand or you have use of less than 10 fingers, sticky keys let you hit keys in sequence rather than having to hold them down simultaneously. So for example, if you want to type a capital letter, you can hit the shift key, then pause for however long you like or need to, and then hit the letter, and the letter will be capitalized for the next keystroke, just as if you'd held down both keys simultaneously. Slow keys is a feature that's very useful for people who have difficulty pulling their hands away fast enough to avoid the key repeat. So if you have slow keys on, you can slow things down so that you can have a long acceptance delay. For example, if you're typing hello, you would need to take your finger off the key after the first L and press it again for the second L to make sure that you're not typing unwanted letters. So for people with tremors, for people with cerebral palsy, etc., that's a very, very nice feature. For the mouse, there are a number of features. Mouse keys is a great feature, especially if you have a separate keyboard number pad. And what that lets you do is to use the number pad instead of having to use the mouse. So most of the numbers except 5 and 0 are directional keys. 5 emulates the mouse click. 0 emulates the drag. So if I had this on and I were to position my cursor over an item, press the 0 key, that would start the drag. I could then move any of the directional keys to drag the item I wanted, say to move it over the trash can, and then press the 5 key to complete the drag, complete throwing that item into the trash. Double click speed for a lot of people, the standard double click speed is not very accommodating. They cannot click fast enough to meet the system requirements, so you can slow the double click speed down quite a bit and make it easier to operate. Since we have a mouse attached, I'm going to show that you can also control the scrolling speed. So again, if your dexterity is such that you cannot move the scroll wheel very fast, you can slow down the scrolling speed so that that's more accommodating. I'm going to pause again and see if there are any questions. Okay, one feature that happens to not be in this version of Yosemite, but that is in the version of Yosemite that's pushed out currently to the fishbowl computers, and I'm assuming will be pushed out to all the site's computers by fall semester, is what's called spring loading delay. What happens by default in Yosemite is if you move an icon to a folder, the folder opens automatically. Now, you may not always want that. You may happen to move the icon over the folder while you're dragging, and that's accidental, or that just happens to, the folder just happens to be in the way, and you don't want that folder to open automatically. So what spring loading delay does is it delays, or it can prevent altogether having that folder open for you on an unwanted basis. Some other features that can be very useful that are outside the accessibility control panel are if you go into the appearance control panel, and I am trying to see where that is. That may not be on this version, so I'm going to see if that's in displays instead. One nice thing about the display is that you can adjust the resolution, whether it's the default or whether you want to have it scaled. You can also adjust the brightness, which is actually different. It's probably not showing up in the webinar, but that's actually different than the increased contrast that's built into the accessibility display control panel. So this brightness lets you get things quite dark. The other one lets you get things very, very light. I don't know why they put those in two completely different control panels, but it's useful to know that both of those are there if you want to adjust the screen brightness. Some other features is if you go into System Preferences and Keyboard, you can adjust the key repeat rate. Again, that's very similar to the feature that was in accessibility, and delay until repeat. One thing that I think a lot of people would benefit from is the ability to adjust the keyboard brightness in low light to make the keyboard easier to see. Text gives you some automatic replacement. So, for example, if there's a phrase that you use very often or a word that you tend to not remember how to spell, it can automatically replace your misspelling or your abbreviation with the information that you want. which is a long-time accessibility feature. Shortcuts, you can modify the standard keyboard shortcuts that are built in, so that if you prefer to use keyboard shortcuts in some situations instead of using the mouse, you can see what the list of keyboard shortcuts is very easily. For example, for keyboard access or for accessibility, etc. To use, or there's a keyboard shortcut that conflicts with a shortcut in one of the other programs that you're using, it's pretty easy to modify that. So that's a very useful feature. The last feature that I'm going to go over today is System Preferences Mouse. Just as very similar to what you had under accessibility, you can drag to adjust how fast you want the pointer to follow the movement of your mouse, and also you can adjust the scrolling speed. So if I make the tracking very slow, that's kind of like moving my mouse through molasses. But for some people that is a good accommodation, or I can, if I want to have my mouse move very fast, I can set it so it's bouncing all over the screen. Scrolling speed, similarly with the scroll option, I can set that to very slow and have the movement go very slowly when I'm scrolling, or set it up to fast so that it's going much faster. Double click speed, again, the option to set how fast or how slow your double click speed is. And one very nice option, particularly for people who are on a two-button mouse but may have a preference because they're left-handed or for whatever other reason, you can set the primary mouse button to be the left button or the right button as you prefer. So that's the gist of the presentation today. I will open things up for additional questions, and if there are none, I will make a few comments about El Capitan, which is the operating system that is currently in beta. Okay, we have been doing some testing with El Capitan. We have not yet found any new features, but we have found that there is significant improvement with VoiceOver, that there is compatibility, particularly with Canvas and El Capitan, that we had not found with Yosemite or earlier versions. So when we roll out Canvas to the campus later this year, that's going to be very important for blind users to be aware of. One thing that I also wanted to highlight about Yosemite's version of VoiceOver is that for the very first time, it does a good job of supporting e-text. It did not read e-text very well in previous versions, but in Yosemite, it actually does seem to do a pretty good job.
And what's e-text?
E-text is electronic text such as you might download from iTunes, and is certainly becoming a much more popular way of delivering textbooks in the post-secondary environment, like ebooks, Patricia says. So I thank you all. Again, our email address is sites.knox@umich.edu if you have any follow-up questions. And thank you for attending today. And I'm seeing, I thought I saw a question come up, but we will be more than happy to entertain questions after the webinar. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Jane. Let me just get back to my thing area. And stick around for just a give us a little more feedback here in the live session. So, resource links for this episode. Here's the link up here, which has a little more than what's in the web links pod. This will be closed caption. It'll be up on our YouTube playlist within a week. And that's about it. Thank you very much. And those of you here in the live episode, please stick around. We're going to stop recording and go to the polls.